Hi friend, welcome back to my channel English Story today. Today, I will tell you a ghost story, so let us begin.
The Marble Hands by Bernard Capes is a creepy short tale about two boys who see something weird in a graveyard. The story was written in 1915 and regarded in 100 hair-raising little horror tales in the Younger Oxford ebook of ghost tales. We left our bicycles with the aid of the little lich gate and entered the vintage churchyard. Harriet had informed me frankly that he did no longer need to return. However, on the last second, sentiment or interest triumphing with him, he had changed his mind. I knew indefinitely that there has been something disagreeable to him within the place's associations, though he had usually referred with affection to the relative with whom he had stayed here as a boy. Perhaps she lay underneath this kind of greening stones. We walked around the church, with its squat, shingled spire. It turned into entirely peaceful, here at the brow of the little metropolis wherein the flowering fields started out. The bones of the hill had been the bones of the lifeless, and its flesh become grass. Suddenly Harriet stopped me. We had been status then to the northwest of the chancel, and a gloom of immobile trees overshadowed us. "I want you simply appearance in there a second," he said, "and come again and tell me what you spot." He turned into pointing towards a bit bay made via the low boundary wall, the inexperienced ground of which was hidden from our view through the thick branches and a couple of interposing tombs, huge, coffer-formed, and close inside rails. His voice sounded peculiar. There was a plunging appearance in his eyes, to use a gambler's phrase. I stared at him a second, observed the path of his hand, then, without a word, stooped underneath the heavy brushing boughs, past spherical the super tombs, and got here upon a solitary grave. It lay there pretty alone in the hidden bay, a peculiar element, great and gruesome. There has been no gravestone, but a beveled marble slash, without call or epitaph, and close to gravelled area from which projected two palms. They had been of white marble, very faintly touched with green, and conveyed in that still, lonely spot a most curious sense of reality, as though without a doubt thrust up, deathly and alluring, from the grave beneath. The impact grew upon me as I looked, till I had to have notion they moved stealthily, consciously, turning in the soil as though to greet me. It changed into absurd, but, I became and went alternatively unexpectedly back to Harriet. "All proper. I see they are there nevertheless," he stated, and that became all. Without some other word we left the region and, remounting, persisted our manner. Miles from the spot, lying on a sunny drawback, with the sheep about us and hundreds cropping the recent grass, he told me the story. She and her husband were living in the town at the time of my first go-to there, whilst I was an infant of 7. They have been regarded to Aunt Catty, who disliked the female. I did now not dislike her at all, due to the fact, while we met, she made a favorite of me. She changed into a bit quite element, frivolous and shallow, but really, I recognize now, with an abominable aspect to her. She became inordinately vain of her arms, and certainly they had been the most endearing things, softer and shapelier than an infant's. She used to have them photographed, in 51 of a kind positions, and once they had been exquisitely finished in marble by a sculptor, a chum of hers. Yes, the ones had been those you noticed, however they had been merciless little fingers, for all their splendor. There was something depraved and unclean approximately the manner wherein she appeared them. She died at the same time as I was there, and she turned into commemorated by way of her personal specific desire after the style you noticed. The marble hands were to be her sole epitaph, more eloquent than letters. They should keep her call in the tradition of her most notable characteristic to remoter a while than any crumbling inscription could attain. And so it turned into carried out. That fancy was not famous with the parishioners, but it gave me no infantile qualms. The palms have been sincerely superbly modeled on the originals, and the originals had often caressed me. I used to be in no way afraid to go and study them, sprouting like white celery from the floor. I left, and years later was visiting Aunt Catty at 2D time. Within the route of communication I discovered that the husband of the lady had married again, a girl belonging to the location, and that the palms, handy's pretty these days, had been removed. The brand new spouse had objected to them, for a few cause possibly not hard to recognize, and that they had been uprooted via the husband's order. I suppose I used to be a touch sorry. The fingers had usually seemed by hook or by crook personal to me, and, on the primary event that offered, I slipped away by myself to see how the grave regarded without them. It became a close, decreasing day, I do not forget, and the churchyard was very still. Directly, stooping under the branches, I noticed the spot. I understood that Aunt Catty had spoken in advance. The arms had not been eliminated to date, but have been extended in their old area and attitude, searching as if held out to welcome me. I was satisfied, and that I ran and knelt, and positioned my own fingers down to touch them. They were tender and cold like dead meat, and that they closed caressingly about mine, as if inviting me to drag, to pull. I don't realize what came about afterwards. Possibly I had been sickening all the time for the fever which overtook me. There has been a duration of horror, and blankness, of crawling, worm-threaded impairments and heaving bones, and then at ultimate the blessed sunlight hours. Harriet stopped, and sat plucking at the crisp pasture. I by no means found out, he said abruptly, what other experiences synchronized with mine. But the location in some way were given an uncanny popularity, and the marble palms have been positioned lower back. Imagination, to be sure, can play strange tricks with one.